You are the last human. Not the latest, the last. Every other human species that ever walked this earth is gone. And for most of the last 7 million years, there were multiple species of humans alive at the same time, competing, interbreeding, building, surviving, until one by one they all disappeared. All except you. And before this video is over, you will find out that some of their DNA is still running inside your body right now. Stay with me, because the story of how we got here is the most staggering thing science has ever uncovered, and almost nobody knows it. Right now, walking around on this planet, there is exactly one species of human, one, Homo sapiens, you. But for most of the last 7 million years, that was not the case. For most of the history of life on this earth, there were multiple human species alive at the same time. Different kinds of humans, walking the same earth, breathing the same air, sometimes living in the same valleys, sometimes interbreeding, sometimes competing, one by one going extinct, until only we were left. This is the story of all of them, every type of human that ever existed, where they came from, what made them remarkable, and what happened to them in the end. But before we get to the humans, we need to start at the very beginning, because the story of humanity does not begin with humans. It begins with the Earth itself. 4.5 billion years ago, there was nothing here. Not emptiness in the way we usually imagine it, not dark space with a planet-shaped hole. There was literally no Earth, just a cloud of gas and dust slowly over millions of years, pulling itself together under the force of its own gravity, colliding, heating, compressing, until roughly 4.5 billion years ago, a molten rock the size of a planet solidified in a particular orbit around a middle-aged star, cooled slowly over hundreds of millions of years, and became the world you are standing on right now. For the first 500 million years, nothing lived here. The surface was volcanic, the atmosphere was toxic, the oceans, when they formed from the water delivered by asteroid impacts, were hot and acidic. This was not a welcoming place. And then, roughly 3.8 billion years ago, something happened that we still do not fully understand. In the shallow, warm waters of the early ocean, the first self-replicating molecules appeared. Not life as we would recognize it, not cells, not organisms, just chemistry that had learned to copy itself. But that was enough. That was the spark. Because once something can copy itself, evolution begins. And once evolution begins, complexity follows, inevitably, unstoppably, over billions of years and billions of generations. For the next 3 billion years, life stayed small. Bacteria, single-celled organisms, slowly, imperceptibly accumulating complexity. Around 600 million years ago, the first multicellular animals appeared in the oceans, soft-bodied creatures, strange forms that have no modern equivalent. And then, around 540 million years ago, in what geologists call the Cambrian explosion, life suddenly diversified into virtually every major animal body plan that exists today. Fish, arthropods, worms, the basic blueprints for almost every animal that would ever live, appeared in a geological instant. Around 375 million years ago, the first vertebrates crawled out of the ocean onto land. Fish-like creatures with fins that were slowly becoming limbs, lungs that were slowly replacing gills. And from that first awkward crawl onto shore, a line of descent began that would eventually, after hundreds of millions of years of evolution, produce us. The dinosaurs came and dominated for 165 million years. And then, 66 million years ago, an asteroid 6 miles wide struck the Earth near what is now Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to 1 billion nuclear bombs. It triggered earthquakes, tsunamis, wildfires. It threw so much debris into the atmosphere that the sun was blocked for years. Temperatures plummeted. Plants died, the food chain collapsed, and the dinosaurs, the dominant life form on Earth for over 100 million years, went extinct. All of them, except for one group, the birds. But in the shadows of the dinosaurs, small, warm-blooded, furry creatures had been surviving, mammals. Mostly small, mostly nocturnal, mostly irrelevant by the standards of the dinosaur world. But when the asteroid hit, their small size and dietary flexibility saved them. They survived, and into the world the dinosaurs left behind, they exploded, diversified, grew larger, and eventually, around 55 million years ago, one branch of the mammal family tree began developing forward-facing eyes and grasping hands adapted for life in trees, the primates. Around 30 million years ago, the primate family tree split. On one branch were the monkeys, on another were the apes, and from the apes, around 7 million years ago in Africa, our own line began. And here is where it gets interesting, because what comes next is not a straight line from ape to human. It's a vast, tangled, extraordinary bush of species, most of which you've never heard of, and most of which were every bit as real and alive and present as you are right now. If this is already shifting how you think about yourself, hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from, and you don't want to miss what comes next. The first creature we can point to as genuinely part of our lineage was Sahelanthropus chidensis, 7 million years ago, found in Chad. It had a small brain like a chimpanzee, but its skull showed signs of an upright posture, the beginnings of bipedalism, the ability to walk on two legs that would define everything that came after. Why walking upright? The savanna. As African forests shrank and grasslands expanded, standing upright gave our ancestors a survival advantage. They could see over tall grass, they could carry food with their hands, they could walk long distances more efficiently than four-legged movement allowed. Two legs freed the hands, free hands allowed tools, tools changed everything. Between 7 and 4 million years, several species of early hominins walked the African landscape. Aurorantugensis, Ardipithecus ramidus, small ape-like creatures with increasingly upright posture and increasingly human-like teeth, spending time both in the trees and on the ground. They are not yet human, but they are the beginning of the road that leads to human. Then came a genus that would define the next 2 million years of hominin evolution, Australopithecus, the southern ape. Multiple species, multiple body types, all bipedal, all relatively small-brained, but recognizably different from any ape that had come before. The most famous of them all is a small female found in Ethiopia in 1974. She was 3 feet tall. She had a brain about the size of a chimpanzee. She lived 3.2 million years ago. Her discoverers named her Lucy. And Lucy, or a creature very much like her, is almost certainly your direct ancestor. We know Australopithecus afarensis walked fully upright, not just from Lucy's bones, but from the Laetoli footprints, preserved in volcanic ash in Tanzania, 3.6 million years old. 2 bipedal creatures walking side by side, their footprints identical in gait pattern to a modern human walking across wet sand, 3.5 million years ago. But Australopithecus was not alone, and this is the part that doesn't make it into most history books. Running alongside it was another branch of the hominin family, the robust Australopithecines, sometimes called Paranthropus, heavily built creatures with massive jaw muscles, enormous back teeth, and thick skulls adapted for grinding tough plant material. Paranthropus boisei, Paranthropus robustus. They were not our ancestors, they were our cousins, and they went extinct around 1 million years ago, leaving no descendants. 2 completely different experiments in what it meant to be a 2-legged creature with a large face and a small brain. Both alive at the same time, both gone now, but only one of them led to you. Then, around 2.9 million years ago, something changed. A new kind of creature appeared in Africa, one with a significantly larger brain, one that was making stone tools, deliberately shaped, deliberately chosen, the first member of the genus Homo, the first human in the truest sense of the word. Homo habilis, the handyman, named for the tools found beside its fossils in Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania.
Small, barely 4 feet tall, with a brain roughly half the size of yours, but the tools were real, and the tools were intentional, and that intention represents a cognitive threshold that separated everything that came before from everything that came after. Homo habilis lived from roughly 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago. It was not the only early human walking Africa at this time. Homo rudolfensis, similar in some ways to habilis but distinct enough to warrant its own species designation, lived alongside it. Two species of human at the same time in the same place.
This is what nobody tells you in school. For most of the history of the human genus, there was not one human species. There were many, all alive simultaneously, all competing for resources, all trying to survive. The idea of one single human species has only been true for a relatively tiny slice of our history. For most of it, we were just one option among several. Now here's the species that'll make your jaw drop. Around 1.9 million years ago, a new species appeared that would become one of the most successful humans to ever live, Homo erectus, the upright man. And everything about Homo erectus is astonishing. Homo erectus was tall, proportioned almost exactly like a modern human, with a brain nearly twice the size of habilis. It made more sophisticated tools. It almost certainly controlled fire. It crossed open water somehow to reach islands that were never connected to any mainland. And it was the first human species to leave Africa entirely, spreading across Asia as far as what is now Indonesia, as far as China, as far as the Republic of Georgia. Homo erectus survived for nearly 2 million years, from 1.9 million years ago to perhaps as recently as 110,000 years ago. It is the longest surviving member of the Homo genus by a massive margin. By comparison, we have only been around for 300,000 years. We are the newcomers. If Homo erectus were alive today, it would have every right to look at us and say, "You have barely just arrived." But here is what nobody tells you about Homo erectus. In 2024, tracks found at Kubifora in Kenya showed that Homo erectus and Paranthropus boise left footprints just meters apart from each other, made within hours or days of one another. Two completely different hominin species walking the same ground at the same time, looking at each other. What did they think? What did they feel? We will never know, but they were there, together. Around 700,000 years ago, as glaciers advanced and retreated across the northern hemisphere, a new species emerged from erectus-like ancestors in Africa and Europe, Homo heidelbergensis, named for a jawbone found near Heidelberg in Germany, the first human to regularly hunt large animals, the first to build shelters, the first to almost certainly bury its dead. With a brain nearly as large as yours and a body not dramatically different from your own, Homo heidelbergensis permanently destroys any remaining image of the dumb, shuffling cave dweller from old movies. These were sophisticated, capable beings operating at a level we have consistently underestimated. And from Homo heidelbergensis, two paths diverged. In Africa, one lineage continued evolving toward us, toward Homo sapiens. In Europe and Western Asia, another lineage evolved into what may be the most famous of all our extinct relatives and the most misunderstood, the Neanderthals. Homo neanderthalensis appears in the fossil record around 400,000 years ago and disappears around 40,000 years ago. And in the century since their discovery, our understanding of who they were has been completely transformed. When the first Neanderthal fossils were found in the 19th century, they were interpreted as brutish, primitive, shambling creatures, more ape than human. That image stuck in popular culture for over 100 years, and it was almost entirely wrong. Neanderthals had brains as large as ours, sometimes larger. They made sophisticated stone tools, they controlled fire, they built shelters, they buried their dead with flowers and grave goods. They made jewelry from eagle talons, they created pigments and applied them to their bodies. They cared for their sick and injured, supporting individuals who could not possibly have survived without help. We find Neanderthal skeletons with healed injuries that would have been instantly fatal without sustained care. Someone fed them, someone kept them warm, someone sat with them through the long nights. And in 2025, new research suggested that Neanderthals may not have gone extinct simply because of climate change or competition with Homo sapiens. The key difference may have been social connectivity.
Homo sapiens formed stronger, more flexible networks that helped them adapt and survive. The Neanderthals were not inferior, they were just less networked, and in the end, that made all the difference. But here is the piece that changes everything. When modern humans left Africa and entered Europe and Western Asia, they met Neanderthals, and they did not simply fight them, they had children with them. Modern humans outside of Africa carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. That DNA is still doing things. It influences your immune system. It affects how your body responds to certain diseases. In some populations, it affects skin color, hair texture, and sleep patterns. You are, in a small but measurable and functional way, part Neanderthal. Let that settle for a moment. But there was another human species in this story, one we did not even know existed until 2010, found not from bones, but from a single finger bone and a tooth in Denisova cave in Siberia, the Denisovans. We have almost no physical remains of Denisovans. What we have is their DNA. And from that DNA, we have reconstructed an extraordinary picture. The Denisovans were a distinct human species, related to Neanderthals but separate from them, who ranged across a vast territory from Siberia to Southeast Asia. They interbred with modern humans as those humans moved into Asia and the Pacific. And today, modern Melanesian populations, the people of Papua New Guinea and nearby islands, carry up to 6% Denisovan DNA. Some of that DNA affects altitude tolerance. Tibetan people carry a Denisovan gene variant that allows them to live at high altitudes where most humans cannot survive, a gift carried in living bodies today from a species we only discovered 15 years ago. In 2025, the skull known as Dragon Man, found in China and sitting in a well since the 1930s, was confirmed by researchers to most likely be a Denisovan. Finally, after years of knowing them only as ghost DNA, we had a face to put to the name. And then there were the small ones, Homo floresiensis, found on the Indonesian island of Flores in 2003, standing only about 3.5 feet tall, with a brain roughly the size of a chimpanzee's, but making stone tools, hunting pygmy elephants, living on Flores from at least 100,000 years ago until perhaps as recently as 50,000 years ago. The press called them hobbits. The name stuck, because there was something almost mythical about the discovery. A tiny human species, isolated on an island, hunting enormous prey with stone tools, surviving alongside modern humans until recently in geological terms. And then there is Homo naledi, found in a cave system in South Africa called the Rising Star Cave in 2013. One of the most remarkable fossil discoveries in recent history. Hundreds of bones from at least 15 individuals, deep in a cave so narrow that only the smallest members of the excavation team could squeeze through to reach the chamber. Homo naledi had a tiny brain, barely larger than Australopithecus, but its hands and feet were almost entirely modern. It lived between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago, overlapping in time and geography with the earliest Homo sapiens. And the most extraordinary detail about Homo naledi, the leading hypothesis for why so many individuals ended up in that deep, inaccessible cave, is that they put themselves there, deliberately. That Homo naledi, with its small brain and ancient body plan, was intentionally depositing its dead in the darkness underground. A mortuary practice, a ritual, from a species we previously would have assumed entirely incapable of such thinking. Everything we assume about the relationship between brain size and behavior is more complicated than we thought. In 2025, researchers working at a site in Ethiopia uncovered evidence of diverse species of human relatives unlike any seen before, roaming the area 2.6 million years ago. Our family tree grows bushier and more complex with every passing year, every dig, every ancient fragment pulled from the earth. Now, enter us. Homo sapiens appears in the fossil record in Morocco around 315,000 years ago. Findings published in Nature pushed our origins significantly back from the previously assumed 200,000 years. Fully modern, anatomically indistinguishable from a human alive today, with a brain capable of language, art, planning, abstract thought, and the full complexity of culture that produces everything from cave paintings to space stations. For tens of thousands of years, we shared the Earth with others. We shared it with Neanderthals. We shared it with Denisovans. We may have encountered Homo floresiensis. We almost certainly coexisted with Homo naledi, multiple species of human, all alive, all on the same planet. And then, one by one, the others vanished. Homo floresiensis disappeared around 50,000 years ago, roughly coinciding with the arrival of modern humans in that region. Homo naledi was gone by 236,000 years ago. The Denisovans faded from the fossil record around 50,000 years ago, and the Neanderthals, who had survived ice ages and everything their range could throw at them for 400,000 years, disappeared around 40,000 years ago, just a few thousand years after modern humans arrived in Europe. Was it our fault? Did we kill them? Did we outcompete them for food? Did we bring diseases they had no immunity to? Did they simply interbreed with us until their distinct identity dissolved into ours, their genes continuing inside our bodies even as they ceased to exist as a separate people? The honest answer is all of these things. The evidence points to a combination of climate change, competition, disease, and interbreeding. The Neanderthals did not simply vanish. In some very real sense, they became part of us. What is certain is this. By around 40,000 years ago, for the first time in at least 7 million years, there was only one human species left on Earth, one branch of a vast family tree that had once held dozens of cousins and parallel experiments in what it meant to be human. Just us, sole inheritors of a planet that was once shared, carrying in our DNA the genetic echoes of relatives we never knew we had until very recently, walking a world that multiple versions of ourselves once walked together. The next time you feel like humanity is something fragile, something recent, something that might not last, remember this. Our family has been walking upright on this earth for 7 million years. We have survived ice ages and volcanic winters and asteroid aftermaths and the extinction of every cousin we ever had. We are not the beginning of the human story. We are its current chapter. And the chapters that came before us, the Neanderthals who buried their dead, the Denisovans who crossed mountains, Homo naledi who walked into the dark, those chapters are not separate from us. They are us, written in our blood, carried forward in every human alive today. We did not replace them. We absorbed them. We became them. And in doing so, we became something that none of them were alone. The last humans and the sum of all of them.